Hi guys, I'd like to know big differences between domestic Japanese ramen and overseas ramens. Please tell me.
The difference, okay. Yeah, so in Japan, that's where ramen is from. That's the best place to have ramen. But when I've been overseas and I try other ramen restaurants in other countries, I have found it quite a bit different, and I'd say it's not as good as the ramen in Japan. And there are a couple of differences that need to be known. I think a lot of the ramen restaurants that are overseas, they may not be from Japanese companies or from Japanese know-how. Like a ramen restaurant in France, it might have just been started in France. There hasn't been that know-how from a Japanese company to teach them how to make ramen as they do in Japan. And also some of the products may be sourced locally and none of it is sourced from Japan. There are a couple of products when you're making ramen that really need to be coming from Japan. From our company, the tare sauce comes from Japan, and that gives our ramen a really good flavour. That's a big difference. I find that the service in overseas perhaps isn't quite the same as in Japan. In Japan, you go to the shop, everyone yells "Irashaimase" very loudly, as you know. There perhaps isn't quite that enthusiasm that you see in other countries. They're a little bit more reserved and a little bit more quiet when you come in, and when you go into the shop, it just makes you feel that little bit less welcome. When you come into a ramen shop in Japan, the staff are greeting you very loudly and they make you very welcome, and they want you to be their guest there.
So you think totally different?
It's quite a different experience having ramen overseas. In Japan, if you have never had ramen in Japan, it's definitely one of the things you need to do in this country.
How do you know about Japanese ramen deeply?
So when I first joined the company, I did training in one of the restaurants in our Ikebukuro store.
Oh yeah?
So I was working in the kitchen, I was learning how to make ramen and doing the noodles, the big flip with the draining. Very tough on the arms.
You wear the towel on your top?
And I had the towel around here and was fully decked out in the uniform.
How long days?
So they were quite long days. I was working for 8 hours. I'd usually start in the morning and begin with a lot of the preparation work and how we get the soup ready for that day ahead. So I would learn how we make our ramen and how we get the soup prepared in advance. In particular, when I was working in the restaurant, the tencho, the store manager, he wanted me to be the person that yelled "Irashaimase" to the customers. I was very nervous at first, but they told louder, be more genki, be more energetic, and after a day I was reasonably comfortable with it.
You got used to it?
I got used to it. I think everyone joined in, and it becomes a more fun experience when you're yelling out loud, you're having fun, everyone else is having fun, and the customers, the guests of the restaurants can see that it's an enjoyable place to be and have a nice meal.
How about the Ikebukuro Shoten?
That was, I'd say that was a very good place. Very good place to learn. The store manager was very helpful and very patient. Everyone who worked there was very helpful to me. Sometimes I couldn't quite understand their Japanese, but they were very patient with me. I was very lucky.
Nice. It sounds nice.
Irashaimase. Okyakusama kuraiten desu yo.
What did you say?
When the customer comes into the store and we yell, "Irashaimase, okyakusama kuraiten desu yo, kuraiten, arigatou gozaimasu." Loud. So everyone in the restaurant could hear, and maybe I got a few looks. Well, who's this guy talking? That sounds a bit strange.
So in the foreign country, they had no attitude to the customer?
Some Japanese restaurants will have that irashaimase to the customers, but a lot do not have that, especially in restaurants where they don't have Japanese staff. They're not as likely to do that, and it just is not as welcoming as it is in the stores in Japan.
Quiet service.
It's a bit quiet.
In Japan, the customer stay for 20 minutes or 30 minutes in the restaurant, Japanese ramen store. How about Europe?
In Europe, when people go out to a restaurant, they tend to stay there for a longer time, like maybe 1 hour or 1 hour.
1 hour? More than 1 hour?
More than 1 hour, yes. So though in Japan you'd come to a ramen restaurant, you would get a bowl of ramen and eat that and then leave. In Europe and other countries, you would maybe get a drink to start off, an appetizer, then a ramen or your main, and then maybe a dessert afterwards.
So many menus.
Yeah, so there's so many different items on the menu, and people would get different items, and they tend to go with a friend or with a group of friends, and they would want to stay at their table and keep talking after they've eaten as well. So they tend to stay at their tables a lot longer than in Japan.
Like izakaya.
Like in izakaya, yeah, that's right.
So European people want to drink with ramen?
Yes, it's very common to drink with ramen, and the ramen restaurants will have a variety of drinks available, soft drinks, tea, coffee, beer, wine, almost everything.
How about the price?
The price of ramen. So the price of ramen in Europe or overseas is much more expensive compared to Japan. I think in Japan, a bowl of ramen maybe around 1,000 yen at most places. I think in Europe you're paying maybe around 20 euros for one bowl of ramen, which is 3,000 yen, so it's three times the price. Expensive.
Totally different.
Totally different.
So you think that's why it's a really big chance in Europe?
That's why Europe is a great opportunity for us to move into, because again, ramen is more expensive there, and I think as we talked about, the quality and service is not as good in Japan. So if we can get that same quality and that same service in Europe, that's a great opportunity to open a restaurant there.
Great opportunities.
Yeah.
So next time I'm gonna ask you which country is the best to open the ramen shop. Can you tell me?
Yeah, I'll tell you next time.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Please check the description if you're interested in the ramen business. Thank you.